Hi, welcome back. My name is Joshua, and this is the second and last part of our short mini-series in addition to our LMS series about how to integrate Stripe purchases. The last time we dropped off at creating this buy page where we have a short overview of what course we want to buy, and we also added some actions and modified old server actions. In this video, however, we want to actually add the Stripe payment form and prove the payment with a webhook. Now, let's jump in. We want to go into the buy folder we created for our buy page. Let's create a new components folder, components. And in here, we want to create the file checkout.tsx. In this component, we are going to define or load the Stripe API, front-end API, and define the elements context, which provides Stripe hooks for the payment form itself. Now, let's export default function checkout, and this wants a client secret, a course, our participation ID, and this deserves an interface checkout interface. The client secret is a string. The course is of type course, and the participation ID is also a string. Now this is of type checkout interface, and we have the component. This component in turn return elements, and we get these elements from Stripe, React Stripe.js, import elements from @Stripe, and yes, from React Stripe.js. These elements in turn want Stripe promise, or it wants a Stripe instance. We will define the Stripe instance with const Stripe promise equals load Stripe. This we get from the Stripe API, from the local API Stripe. Now, where is it? Let's import it ourselves. Import load Stripe from at Stripe and Stripe.js. Yes, here we have load Stripe, and this also, no, this just needs the environment variable for the public key. Important, we need the public key here because this is going to be a client component and loads the Stripe API into the front end. Use client, and here we have process.env.next public stripe.public key, and if we don't get one, let's pass in an empty string. Now, this Stripe promise we can then pass to the elements and options. Here we also want the client secret. In here, we can now add a comment for later, because we want to add here the payment form later on. But first, let's integrate the checkout into our page. Checkout, and the checkout wants client secret. Now, we don't actually have the client secret here yet because we still need to call the create payment intents before we return the page. And this we do by before we check if there is a course, we want to call const client secret and participation ID. Want to get both of these from a wait create payment intent, and the payment intent in turn wants to have a course and a user. And we also want to assert that there is a client secret, very important. And this wants a user. This cannot handle if there's no user, so we're gonna check if there is a user. So if there's new user, we're gonna redirect simply to log in. Okay, now we have the client secret here. We can pass it on, and we can pass the participation ID, close the checkout element. No, he wants something more. Ah, yes, he wants also the course. And course. Perfect. Now, the next thing we want to add is the form itself. For that, we create another component. We call it payment form.tsx. And in here, this is also a client component. We export default function payment form. And this payment form wants a course and a participation ID, for which we're also going to create an interface payment face course of type course and participation ID of type string. Participation ID of type string. And let's copy this to here. And we have our payment element. Now, our payment element uses Stripe hooks. The first hook we need and want is the const stripe equals use stripe. And this we get from the React Stripe element. Let's import this. Use stripe from stripe React Stripe. Okay, there we have it. The next form we need, the next hook we need is the use elements. This is also provided from the React Stripe. Const elements equals use elements. There we have it. And then we want to create the actual form, so we're gonna return a form element form, and on submit we're gonna do later class name is in this case space y6 to get a nice spacing in the form. Here we want to have the actual payment element, which we can also import from here. We also need to display error messages if there is any error message. That let's create a state for this. Const error message, set error message equals use state string. And if there is an error message, we want to display it. So here we do error message and then create a div to wrap it. Class name equals, and the text should be small. And yeah, and then close it. Error message in here. The next thing is we want to define a button to submit the form. So button with n, type equals submit. It is disabled if it's processing, so let's also add a state for processing. Const is processing. Where am I? is processing and set is processing equals use state boolean. This by standard is false, and disabled equals is processing. Now we also want to add some styles to this button. Let's do class name equals bgteal 500 and hover bgteal 600. The text is supposed to be white. We have a padding on the x-axis of 4, a padding of the y-axis of 2, and rounded medium. We have, when it's disabled, it's supposed to have an opacity of only 50, opacity 50, and the cursor is supposed to be not allowed. Disable cursor not allowed. Let's close this off. If it is actually processing, we're gonna differ, or let's show the text first, and then if it is actually processing, we want this to show loading. I know there could be also a nice spinner animation, but this is homework for you to come up with a nice spinner animation for this button. Is processing, and if it is processing, I do the question mark. If it is processing, let's do processing ... And if it is not processing, let's do a template string by chorus4 and then $. And we want to use the number format again. New intel.number format in the US format, and format the actual number. Here we have chorus.price. This is not closed, so it gives an error, and now we have more errors. What is happening here? We actually got one closing brace. Too much. Now, another thing we want to do is to add the submit handler. Let me change this really quick. Want to add the submit, so let's do on submit equals handle submit, and let's define the function. So function handle submit. In this function takes an event which is of React form event, type React form event, and the first thing now is event.prevent defaults. Then want to check if we don't have stripe or we don't have elements, we just return, because then we don't want to do anything. Otherwise, we set is processing on true, and we call payment. We call stripe to confirm the payment with the payment intent. Now we call payment intent we want to get the payment intent from stripe. Await stripe.confirm payment, and we pass here elements, and we also need to pass this redirect if required. Now let's also set this on async so it does not cry. Okay, this actually we submit through pressing this button. We submit the payment, or we submit the payment to Stripe, and the payment is processed. And then we want to listen to, or not listen, we want to confirm the payment through the payment API. If this payment has succeeded, payment intent status equals succeeded, then we want to wait for 3 seconds because the webhook might not have updated yet, and want to set a timeout. For 3000 milliseconds and redirect the user to the participation. Window.location.href equals window.location.origin, and then we add dashboard participation and slash participation ID. Otherwise, the payment has not worked, and we set is processing on false and give an error message. Set error message, payment not completed, please try again. Okay, now that is pretty much it. That's it pretty much for the checkout page, and in theory, save all, this should now already process a payment. Let's try it out. Let's reload our page. Okay, before that works, we obviously have to add the payment form to this element, payment form. Here it is, and it wanted the course and the participation ID. So course and participation ID, participation ID, and we save this, we save all of it and reload it. And yeah, we have now this payment form with the by course ad. Now in theory, if we put in here now 42424242, oops, 4242, and you can try it with the same number as it's provided by Stripe and some random security code. If we click on buy now, this should actually already process the payment and then reroute us to the participation. But the participation should not display to us the course content, as we put that behind the control, behind the exit control. And we still have to implement the webhook to process and to allow the user to access this content then. Let's see what is happening here. We are processing now. And yes, perfect. We have been rerouted like we wanted to the participation, and we actually have access to the course, but all the content is still locked. If we go now to participation, we see here we have this participation. It has a payment intent ID, but paid state is false. Now, what we want to do is to add the webhook to verify the payment. Okay, even before that, as we are already on this page, let's add a small view that tells the user, hey, the process is still pending, the payment is still pending, we could not verify yet, please reload the page or wait until it's done. Obviously you can implement some kind of polling for this, but that's beyond the scope of this tutorial. Then let's go to participation, the page, and the course viewer, and basically just in here we can add if participation.paid equals false, then we return a div. This div has a class name equals full. It has a max width of 4XL. It has an MX auto padding of 6 units. It's a flex layout, a flex column layout, and has a gap of 6. It also contains a div with a class name equals flex items start and a gap of 3. This again contains a div. In here we actually want just an exclamation mark, HI exclamation triangle. It has a class name of height 6 units, a width of 6 unit. It is text yellow 400, and directly beneath this we have another div. This div has an h3 heading with the text payment pending, and class name text sm font medium medium, text yellow 400, and beneath we have a p tag. I'm simply gonna copy paste this content now. You can write whatever you want, or you can type this out. Your payment is being processed, and this has a class name of empty1, so we want a little margin at the top. It's also text sm, text yellow 500, and beneath that we want another little paragraph that tells us to refresh the page again. Refresh the page. It also has, actually we don't need these margins here if we do class name flex col gap 1 and give this a class name text sm and text yellow 500. Now let's reload this, and it should look like this. So if we don't have paid yet, then simply display this error. You can display something nicer, but that's doing it for now. The next thing we want to do is to process the webhook. Let's close everything that we don't need anymore. In order to receive webhooks with or locally, you should have installed before the Stripe API, the Stripe CLI. If you did that, then you can type out Stripe listen forward to localhost :3000 Stripe webhooks Stripe. Now this, yes, this should do something now, and it gives us, or it tells us that it's listening now to the webhooks, and it forwards all the webhooks to this webhooks Stripe endpoint, which we're going to build soon. But more important also, it gives us this security token, which we will copy now and paste into our env. Let's paste it into Stripe webhook and save it. Next thing we want to do is to create the endpoint, which we're going to put into app. Let's create simply a webhooks folder here, folder webhooks. Wait, how did we name it? Yes, webhooks plural. In here we want to create another folder, Stripe, and in this Stripe folder we want to create a file which is called route.ts. Now in this route we want to receive the webhook. Okay, for this webhook we are exporting a post webhook, or a post endpoint, which is export async function post, and this gets a request of the type request from Next.js, and yeah, there we have the function. Also, we need to configure it to not parse the body, because we want to parse the body of the webhook. In order to tell Next.js that it should not auto parse the body, we have to export const config equals API body parser false. And what we also can do is directly initiate the Stripe API with const stripe equals new Stripe want to import this from import Stripe from Stripe. Perfect, there we have it. And this new Stripe, it takes the private key, process.env .stripe, and if we don't get it, let's pass an empty string. Now this sets up our Stripe SK secure. No, what is it actually? Let me look for a second. Stripe, yes, secret key. That's working. And next, let's talk about the webhook, because Stripe sends it to us in a encoded format and we need to decode this. So the first thing we want to get is to get the signature from the header. So sig const sig equals request dot headers dot get Stripe signature. Then if we don't have this signature, then we pretty much can stop processing it. So return next response dot JSON error missing Stripe signature, and it has a status of 400. Status 400. Now, if we have it actually, let's define an event from stripe.event and try to deconstruct the event or construct the event from the encoded information in the webhook. In this, we want first to get the raw body. So raw body equals await request.text. Then when we have the raw body, we want to assign the event equals stripe.webhooks.construct event equals this takes in the raw body, the signature, and it takes the Stripe webhook secret. Let's copy this name really quick. So process.env.stripe webhook secret. Again, if we don't get anything in here, where is the, yes, let's pass an empty string. And yeah, this should get us the event type that we need. If for some reason that does not work, let's get an error here, and we simply return the error. Next response.json. This has an error. Let's make this a template string. Webhook error, and this takes error.message. Error, yes. Error.message. Actually, let's not make this more complicated than it has to be. We're just gonna return webhook error, and again the status 400. Status 400. Perfect. Now, in the next step, we want to update our participation with Payload. That means in here, we want to get the Payload local API. So let's get Payload equals await get Payload. And this one's a config. So config, and we're gonna use the config promise again. Config promise. To get the config promise, we need to import it. So import config promise from @payload config. And with this, we're gonna open a switch case statement, because from this event, we get several types of webhooks. and with this we can feed into a switch case and then decide what we're gonna do with each kind of webhook. So switch event.type. Actually, there is a really extensive list of webhook events that Stripe supports. For this, just Google. They all have a similar format. So the events we need is, actually you can see them here. We need payment intent succeeded, because if it succeeded, we want to update the payment or the participation to payment or to paid true. For this, we need to get the actual payment intent ID, because we saved the payment intent ID in the participation, and thus we can update it. So const payment intent equals event.data.object as stripe pay.payment intent, and from the payment intent we get the ID. So let's try to update it. Wait payload.update. This takes a collection participation and where the payment intent equals the payment intent.id. And we need data. This is simply paid true. Okay, this now should already work. Let's finish the try catch error console.error. Let's simply log it. Error updating participation. There are two more cases that we want to look at, and these are the cases if the payment failed, because if the payment failed, we actually want to delete the participation again. For this, let's add here another case, payment intent dot cancelled, and case payment intent payment failed. For both of these cases, it's basically the same. We want again the payment intent, and with this we simply want to delete the item. So we can copy this again. Let's add the curly braces, and we can copy this. Error deleting participation, and we do delete, and basically we just need to delete where the payment intent equals the payment intent ID. There's also a default case, which means basically we have not handled it. So default console.log this is just an unhandled event type. Unhandled and we get event.type, and that is basically it. If we processed the webhook correctly, then we want to return next response.json and we're gonna return a boolean received true. Perfect. Now we added the webhook. Let's start this again. First let's delete this out of the database. Okay, the database is empty again. The server is running, and we are going to go to the buy page now. Let's go on the auth system course. Then we click on buy the course. This should then already trigger the first webhooks. Yes, the payment intent created, and we unhandled event, we received this event. We are now here. We can pass in our credit card data for chat, and we click on buy. Let's see what is happening. This is now calling events. It's the charge has been succeeded, the payment intent succeeded. We should be rerouted any second to the course. Oops, this course page couldn't be found. Let me see. Okay, there was something silly. I found the mistake. We actually forgot to include the break statement here. Break. And it has created the participation, but because everything was then executed, the participation was right away deleted again. Now for testing purposes, I created this element in the database. Let's reload this page. Okay, this looks better now. We have here the Stripe form. In the database, we have the participation. If I do this now, then it should work. Let's see. We get the correct events. And we go to the course, and yes, the course content loads. If we reload now this here, it should be set to true because the payment has been received. We can see here again, we received the payment intent success. We updated the participation with paid, and as it is true, paid is true, we allow the user to access the actual course content. Now, this is it for this tutorial. If you have any wishes about other tutorials, please write them into the comments. And yeah, let's see you soon and have fun.